Hello, welcome to 1000 PS TV. Today I have something really special for you. The new Ducati Panigale V4S 2022. And the rider is Martin Bauer, our new fast test rider in the 1000 PS crew. He's 3 times champion of the German International Championship, superbike rider. He won there with KTM and with Honda. He also attended some wildcard MotoGP races and I think he was the fastest guy during this international press test, apart from the Ducati MotoGP riders who also were on the track. He was impressed by the Ducati V4S, but look forward to the test video and listen to the test results of Martin Bauer.
On the GP circuit in Jerez, the front row Ducati presented the upgrade of the Panigale V4S for the first time and invited for a test ride. The track is really a highlight with many different curves designed, which made it possible to experience the innovations well. The V4S was driven as it is appropriate for a real Italian, on Pirelli slicks in the mixture SC1. But first an overview of the innovations. The now widespread wings on the sides of the fairings of the current superbikes we know by now and have already been found on the previous model of the Panigale. However, these have been redesigned for 2022 to further improve efficiency. Through further tests, the ratio of downforce to aerodynamic drag has now been further improved through changes to the profile. This results in a downforce of approx. 37 kilograms at 300 kph. In addition, the appearance of the wings has become much slimmer and more discreet. The ergonomics have also been improved with a modified tank and seat shape. This is intended to minimize the effort required for fast driving on the racetrack thanks to a better seating position and better grip, especially during heavy braking maneuvers. Although the engine was already a gem on the previous model with its 1103cc, Ducati has also lent a hand here. With modified diameters in the exhaust system and an oil pump that produces less power loss, the performance could be increased by about 2 horsepower despite Euro 5. Thus the Panigale reaches now 215.5 HP with 13,000 revolutions per minute in the series trim. What is more noticeable than the 2 horsepower increase in power, however, is the change in gear ratio. With longer first, second and sixth gear, the focus here is clearly on the racetrack. Because now you can use the first gear effectively on many racetracks, since this was selected about 12% longer. Another advantage is that the spread between first and second gear is significantly smaller. Thus, the shifts in this gear, which are somewhat rough on many bikes, are silky smooth and comfortable and can be used optimally by means of shift automat and blipper without clutch. The longer sixth gear should allow for a higher top speed, or if you're thinking about the racetrack, a shorter overall gear ratio. The power delivery is of course designed for peak performance, and with a maximum torque at 123.6 Nm at 9,500 revolutions per minute, thus for higher speeds, and also demands it if you want to call up the full potential of the engine. Especially the chapter driving aids has significantly improved the drivability of the strong superbikes in recent years. Ducati already had a very good control system before, but control algorithms have been refined once again. The adjustments can be well individualized by generous setting options, since the first gear can now also be used due to the modified transmission. This is a great help for many in order not to be overwhelmed by the engine's acceleration. The layout of the display has also been adapted for the racetrack. The important parameters such as speed, gear, lap time and driving aids have been moved to the foreground and are therefore very easy to see. The driving aids are divided into TC, SC, WC and EB and clearly displayed on the right edge of the display with the stored values. What is probably a nice innovation for many is that when one of these controls is intervened, this is also indicated accordingly by a colored light up of the respective channel. Thus, the driver knows which of these driving aids is currently reducing the power and thus makes further adjustments easier. Normally this is controlled and adjusted by means of data logging afterwards, but with this display there is now also the possibility to get information in real time. In order to get a guideline with all the setting options, Ducati has already pre-programmed various riding modes such as Race A, Race B, Sport and Street. These include setting values of riding aids, suspension and ride-by-wire. These presets can also be quickly called up and used while riding. An individual adjustment is of course possible. The new Panigale is available in two versions, the standard V4 and the V4S. The former comes with conventional suspension components from Showa and Sachs, while the V4S rolls out of the store with the Smart EC 2.0 electronic suspension from Öhlins. Here, the click settings of the damping are performed by the ECU. There are two different modes here, the manual and the automatic. In the manual mode, the settings of the compression and rebound stages of the fork and shock absorber can be made via the display, while the automatic mode permanently makes additional adjustments during the ride depending on the riding condition of the motorcycle. This control can also be adjusted by changing various parameters. These are then no longer called rebound and compression damping but are combined in generic terms such as brake support, stability, etc. This should make suspension adjustment more tangible for non-chassis engineers. However, even with the electronic suspension, the adjustment of the spring preload must be adjusted manually with tools. The predecessor also had the electronic suspension, but additional changes were made for the 2022 model. The fork now has 125 mm of travel, allowing the use of a softer fork spring without going on block under hard braking. The rear shock has been slightly adjusted in the setting, as Ducati has also set the swing arm pivot point 4 mm further up. This prevents the vehicle from sinking in sharply under heavy acceleration and thus allows tighter radii in the acceleration phase. How does the new one drive with all the updates? The 2022 model is not a revolution but an optimization in many details. The slight increase in performance is nice to have, but will probably hardly be noticeable for most pilots. What I did like, however, is the change in gear ratio. On some racetracks with tight corners, even on superbikes, you're sometimes in a bit of a quandary. With second gear, the revs drop a bit far down, and with first gear, you're quickly in the limiter and have one more shift in the acceleration phase. In addition, this is usually rough with conventional gear ratios and a large spread and brings a lot of unrest to the chassis. That's why I think this step is a great help on the racetrack. Where there's light, there's also shadow, so the long first gear makes the starting process a bit more difficult and requires a lot of feeling on the clutch, since it has to remain depressed for a very long time. The clutch also gets a good beating and it remains to be seen how it will cope with this in continuous operation. However, we still had the standard transmission mounted and thus the first gear is translated to about 100 miles per hour. The necessary shortening of the secondary gear ratio in racetrack use will be helpful here. However, the second big plus point for me is the controllability of the drift angle even without the electronic driving aids. To feel this better, I disabled the driving aids and set the electronics to full power. Even with that, it's very easy to fire the V4S out of the corner with a slightly oversteering rear wheel. This shows that the suspension work has been done very well and the weight distribution and pitching has been tuned well. This is also the right way to make a vehicle faster. Many usually get lost in electronic interventions that then make the ride a little more controllable, but not faster. Even with degrading tires, control is still incredibly good without electronics. The stability in the acceleration ranges is also enormously good, and here the wing effect also comes into play. The tuning of the suspension components is well done and can also be used well on the racetrack in automatic mode. However, it is usually better to go to manual settings for tough racetrack use, since you always know what is happening and the driver can adjust better to it. Depending on the driver's wishes, the racetrack and the tires used, suspension work is always necessary for lap time optimization anyway. I like the modified ergonomics, as they are an important way to require less effort riding the bike. There's just one thing I have to say about this. Riding really fast on such powerful bikes will always be exhausting, because the rider's weight shift against the acting G-forces is an important tool to control the vehicle. The only small drawback may be the brake. Although very good components are used, it is somewhat spongy in the ABS compound and requires some manual force. But the ABS control in race mode with disengageable rear wheel function is also suitable for the shortest braking distances, and thus also for track use. What I would like to see for track use is a water temperature display in degrees. This is only displayed in the form of a bar graph. In road use sufficient is on the starting position, possibly even without fan. A display accurate to degrees but important. By further improving the rideability, the Panigale can certainly score points with more and more riders. The latest update of the Panigale V4S, however, brings some advantages in terms of racetrack use and probably enables an improvement in lap time for many riders compared to its predecessor, not least due to the wide range of settings. But how much depends largely on the driver.